This podcast, brought to you by Anchor, is currently non-profit making and is based on the second edition coursebook on international history from 1870 to 1945 for Cambridge International AS Level History. Hello, and thank you all for tuning in. In this episode, I'll be speaking about Hitler's foreign policy aims and the Anschluss with Austria. Before he became Chancellor, Hitler outlined his foreign policy aims in his autobiography, Mein Kampf, which he wrote during his imprisonment. It expressed 1. That Germany needed to expand its empire to meet the prestigiousness of the other empires, so they needed colonies. 2. His wish to expand mainland Germany east into Russian land. 3. The need for an expanded army. This was because they wanted to reoccupy the Rhineland, and Germany wished to expand to Czechoslovakia and Austria. Military leaders objected to this. However, when they quit due to personal scandals, Hitler assumed their position of control over the army. Many historians have argued whether Hitler's goal all along was to start World War II. According to the Hossbach Memorandum, which was written on November 10, 1937, 5 days after the conference had occurred, it is evident that Hitler's main aim was to gain land. As a result, he had begun planning for war. On the one hand, some historians use the Hossbach Conference as evidence that Hitler planned war. This is because they believe that this was when Hitler announced his plans for war in Europe if he could not gain his desired Lebensraum in the East by peaceful methods or diplomatic negotiation. Furthermore, he believed that if Nazi Germany's wishes for land were not met, that Hitler had a duty to war. Additionally, the document lists the participants of the conference, which provides evidence of Hitler's intentions. Attendees included Colonel Friedrich Hossbach, the military adjutant to Hitler, Field Marshal Werner von Blomberg, Minister for War, General Werner Freiherr von Fritsch, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Admiral Erich Raeder, Commander-in-Chief of the Navy, or Kriegsmarine, Colonel General Hermann Göring, Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe, and Konstantin Freiherr von Neurath, the Foreign Minister. Their positions of power over the military evidently suggest Hitler's motives and wishes to utilize the military and gain land for Germany by force. On the other hand, other historians believe that the memorandum was vague, believing its purpose to be for Hitler to gain an understanding of the mindset and opinions of the military leaders and people holding high positions in the German government. Furthermore, they argue that the final memorandum, which is available to historians, had been carefully edited by the Allies before the start of the Nuremberg trials, and their contents may not be treated as completely reliable. The meeting began as Hitler ordered complete secrecy, and only Hitler's closest advisors were invited to attend. Not only did this suggest that Hitler believed war was imminent if the Allies were given evidence of their meeting, but he also outlined his decisions and told the military leaders who attended to view his words as a political testament in the event of his death, which would mean war, even if Hitler was killed or taken by illness. Anschluss with Austria. Hitler wished to practice his policy of a united Germany with Austria, who were German-speaking. Many people in Austria supported this idea as their country's economy was weak. They believed that unification with Germany would make them stronger. In early 1938, Hitler had encouraged Austrian Nazis to stir up trouble and stage demonstrations and riots across the country. They called for unification with Germany. In a meeting with the Austrian leader, Kurt Schuschnigg, Hitler told him that the crisis would only be resolved if he accepted the Anschluss with Germany. He reluctantly agreed. However, in a last-minute attempt, he called a referendum for the people to decide whether to unite with Germany. Hitler worried that Austrians would vote against the Anschluss and forced Schuschnigg to resign, appointing the leader of the Austrian Nazis in his place. In the elections, voters were watched over by German soldiers, and 99.75% of Austrians voted for the unification with Germany. This meant that Austria's army, weapons, rich deposits of valuable ores and resources were added to Germany's growing army and industry. It had become clear that Britain and France were unlikely to react, as Germany had broken yet another term of the treaty. Finally, onto the Sudetenland crisis and the Munich Agreement. The policy of appeasement was a policy of Britain and France in the 1930s, which allowed Hitler to break the terms of the Treaty of Versailles as they gave in to his demands to avoid war. It is when a country is unwilling to support or defend a policy Therefore, they give in to more demands of an aggressor to avoid war. The Sudetenland crisis arose when 3 million German speakers who lived in the Sudetenland area of Czechoslovakia claimed that the Czech government was not treating them fairly. As a result, Hitler encouraged them to stir up trouble in Czechoslovakia and demanded that the area should be allowed to reunite with Germany. The Czech leader, Edward Beneš, became concerned that Hitler would invade his country, so he asked Britain and France to support him if it came to war. However, they were reluctant to do so, and Britain sent a politician to Czechoslovakia to recommend that certain parts be given to Germany. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain met with Hitler, declaring that the Czech government had agreed to give him parts of the Sudetenland. Hitler was unhappy with this settlement and demanded the whole of the Sudetenland. As Chamberlain refused, war seemed likely, so people in Britain began constructing air raid shelters. Mussolini arranged a meeting, which became known as the Munich Agreement, between Britain, France, and Germany in Munich in September 1938. It was agreed that Hitler be given the entire Sudetenland. As Chamberlain returned to Britain, he was saluted as a hero, as he was able to prevent war. German soldiers seized the Sudetenland on October 1st, 1938, with no shots fired. 2 days later, the Czech leader, Edward Beneš, resigned. This is the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening.